session we are going to learn what is Azure Disk and what are the types of disk is available in this Azure, and we are also going to see what different types of disk encryption, disk roles, and manage disk snapshot and manage custom image, and also we'll see disk bursting. Okay, so let's start to the session. Okay, introduction to Azure Disk. So Azure Disk is a virtual hard drive in the cloud, block level, and also it is block level storage volumes for SSD and HDD. So we have two types of disk, right? Solid state disk and hard drive disk. So Azure provides a block level storage volume, the volume for disk, and so it is in cloud. So let's see more about Azure Disk. So Azure Managed Disk or block level storage volumes that are managed by Azure and used with Azure VMs. So in compute resources we use Azure VMs, and we see this Azure VM as more prior service for use for dealing with Azure. So every Azure will use some disk, either OS disk or data disk, and also we have some other thing called temporary disk. All those disks are managed by Azure, and some cases we can have unmanaged disk also, but we are not going to see those things here. We'll restrict ourselves to managed disk, and these disks are managed by Azure, and it is also a block level storage volume. Managed disk or like a physical disk in an on-premise server but virtualized. So in computers we'll have some disk, right? So managed disk also is same like a similar like physical disk, but it is virtualized. So that is the only difference between this managed disk provided by Azure and the physical disk that we have in the on-premise servers. So it can do all the activities that we do in on physical disk in the similar way, and it is managed by Azure. So you can be free from management part. Okay, so you can specify type, size, and other configurations without worrying about underlying hardware. So whenever you need some whenever you completed the total size of total storage usage of Azure Disk, in those cases you might in on your physical disk, in those cases you want to buy one new disk, and you have to go install all the applications and you must use. But here you can simply increase the size of your disk, and you can change the type of the preferred type and other configurations without worrying about the underlying hardware. And managed disk are designed for 99.999% availability, so you need not worry about the availability of your data. Whenever you create a Azure managed disk and you store some data on your disk, Azure creates 3 replicas of your data, allowing for high durability. So where some cases are accidentally your original data is destroyed, in those cases you need not worry. Azure will provide high durability. So it creates the 3 replicas of your single data, and you can take the data from those copies. Okay, so it provides high durability. Then you can create up to 50,000 VM disk of a type in a subscription per region. You can have a subscription, and you can have you can add any region to your subscription, and you can create any services in different region in a single subscription. So in per region you can use 50,000 VM disk of air type. So you can have, so there are many types of disk like premium SSD, standard SSD, standard HDD. So those disk of a single type, you can create up to 50,000 VM disk. And VM disk, that's really a high number. You can create up to 50,000 VM disk of a type in a subscription per region. Next, allowing you to create up to 1000 VMs in a virtual machine scale set using a marketplace image. So whenever you are using virtual machine scale set, in that time you can use 1000 VMs, okay, 1000 VMs using a single marketplace image. And managed disk are integrated with availability sets. So whenever you are going to create availability set, you need not create separate managed disk to the availability set. So whenever you create availability set, automatically your managed disk also will be created. And managed disk supports availability zones. So you can use managed disk in different zones. And you can use Azure backup whenever you need to do backup jobs with time based backup or and backup retention policies. So whenever you need to do backup of your data disk, so you can use it with time based backup. So right at 8 o'clock or right at 9 o'clock, so you can use that time based backups. And you can also use backup retention policies using this Azure disk. And you can use role based access control to assign specific permission for a management disk to one or more users. So you can have whenever you have an organization and you have multiple users, and you can give specific permission for a managed disk. So using role based access control, you can give according to your requirement, okay. And you can directly import your virtual hard disk drives to into Azure Disk. So whenever you have virtual hard disk on your on premise, you can directly import that virtual hard disk into Azure Disk. And you can also use Azure private links to ensure traffic between Azure Disk and VMs stay within the Microsoft network. So in a Microsoft network, you will have multiple Azure VMs and Azure Disk. To ensure the traffic between Azure Disk and VMs, you can use private links. So these are the introduction about Azure Managed Disk and some of the features also. So we'll see more about Azure Disk in upcoming slides. Okay. So next we are going to see about Azure Disk Encryption. So what is encryption? So whenever you have whenever you have a data disk, you will store some application data or other datas, or whenever you want some specified encryption. What is encryption? So that is what I need to say, right? So encryption, so whenever you need to prevent your data from other parties, from other users, that time you can change this data to an encoded one, and you will have some keys. So once you keep the key proper, once you use the proper key, your data will decrypt and you can see the original data. So that is encryption. So Azure Disk supports two types of encryption. One is server-side encryption and Azure Disk encryption. So what are the difference between Azure Disk encryption and server-side encryption? We'll see now. Server-side encryption, that is SSE, provides encryption at rest and safeguards your data to meet your organizational security and compliance commitments. So whenever you have data, you need to safeguard your data at rest, you can use server-side encryption, and it will promote your organizational security and compliance commitments. So it is enabled by default for all management disk, snapshot and images. But whenever you have temporary disk, it is not enabled by default. Instead, you need to enable encryption enable encryption at host. So once you enable encryption at host, this server-side encryption will be enabled for temporary disk also. So there are two. So as I said, when you will have some keys to decrypt the data. So here also we have those keys. How this server-side encryption manages this case are in two ways. So one is by platform managed keys, another is customer managed keys. So another is customer managed keys. So customer managed keys must manage their keys by themselves, whereas platform managed keys, Azure will manage their keys. They need not worry about managing all the keys. They can simply use the keys to decrypt the data, and whenever their usage is over, they can encrypt the data again. So this is all about server side encryption. Next comes the Azure Disk encryption. So Azure Disk encryption allows you to encrypt the OS and data disk used by an IaaS virtual machine. So when you will have virtual machine, and you will have for sure you will have some OS inside the Azure VM. So that OS disk will be encrypted using this Azure Disk encryption, and sometimes you can encrypt your data disk also. So whenever you want to encrypt your Windows, whenever you want Windows encryption, in that case you can use BitLocker. So it is an application which enables the Windows encryption for the users. Okay. So next, so these are the things about server side encryption and Azure Disk encryption. Next, we shall move to Azure Disk roles. So we have three main disk roles in Azure. One is Azure Data Disk and Azure Data Disk, the OS disk, and the temporary disk. So we'll see what are the difference between all these three in this slide, and also understand the difference between them. Now first let us move to data disk. So this is a managed disk that is attached to a virtual machine to store application data or other data you need to keep. So whenever you have a VM, you need to store some data into that VM, and even in our own on-premise computers or on-premise servers, we will have some data disk where we will have all the application data stored, and other data, not only application data and other data, when other files of our personal files will be stored there. So similarly in VM or virtual machine also, we will attach some disk, that is managed disk, to store the application data and other data. Okay, so these data are registered with SCSI drives and are labeled with letter that we choose. So we can choose any letter in the alphabet, English alphabet, and you can give that letter. So whenever you open the file manager, you will get some data. You will get the access to that data disk. So the minimum capacity of this data disk is 32,767 GB, and that's a great number, right? So you can use that much capacity, so maximum capacity. The size of the VM determines how many data disks you can attach and the type of storage you can use. So we have VM, and we have different sizes and different series of VM. So that size of VM determines how many data disks we can attach to a single virtual machine and the type of storage of the data disk. So these are the things about a data disk. Next comes to the OS disk. So every virtual machine has one attached operating system disk. So yes, we have VM, and we must have some operating system installed in the VM, so that we will use the hardware, the virtual machine efficiently. So each and every VM will have some attached, at least one attached operating system disk, so that the disk will be having pre-installed OS for the VM that we selected while creating the VM. So whenever we select Windows Server 2019, we have many generations in that. So whenever you select that OS, the OS will be pre-installed in your OS disk, and the OS disk will be attached to the virtual machine. So here we have it contains boot volume, and the maximum capacity of the OS disk is 4095 GB. Next, we have temporary disk. So most VM contains a temporary disk which is not a managed disk. So it is not managed by Azure. So it is used for short-term storage for application and processes. So it is only for, so temporary disk, the name itself says it is used for short-term storage for application and processor, and intended to store data such as pages and swap files. So whenever we need some temporary files to be stored, you can use temporary disk. Okay, so it is not managed by Azure. And every VM most of the VMs contains this temporary disk. Data on the temporary disk may be lost during maintenance event or when you redeploy a VM. So whenever you are going to redeploy your VM, or in some cases you will use for the maintenance purpose, you do maintenance event. In those cases, the data inside the temporary disk may be lost. So you must use the data, so you must store the data accordingly. So but when you do standard reboot of the VM, in that case data on the temporary disk will persist, it will not go. So the next temporary disk is typically /dev or /sdb, or on Linux and Windows VM, the temporary disk is D. So with the temporary disk will have the letter D by default. So it is not encrypted by SSE unless you enable encryption at host. So as we saw in the previous slide, temporary disk will not have encryption by SSE. So we need to enable, if you want to enable the SSE, you need to enable encryption at host. So these are the things about disk roles. Next we will see the difference between Azure managed disk snapshots and managed custom image. A managed disk snapshot is a read-only crash consistent full copy of a managed disk. Oh, wait, ma'am. Okay. So a managed disk snapshot is a read-only crash consistent full copy of a managed disk. So whenever you need to do you need a copy of a managed data disk, you can create a snapshot. So this snapshot is a read-only copy. So you can copy of a managed disk. So once it is a managed disk, you can take a copy, you can take a snapshot. So if whenever you want any new disk, you can create a new disk by using this snapshot. Okay, it is stored as a standard managed disk by default. Whenever you create a snapshot, the snapshot by default, it will be stored as a standard managed disk. Okay, so its snapshots or point in time recovery. So whenever you want to recover the data from the data disk, you can take a snapshot and you can create uh, any new disk from the snapshot. So snapshot exists independent of the source disk. So once you created the snapshot, again any changes done in the data disk will not affect the snapshot, or any changes that you do in snapshot will not affect the source disk. So they will be existing independent of from each other, and it can be, and whenever you want a new managed disk with the same data, you can use the snapshot to create a new managed disk. And most importantly, snapshot are built based on used size. So whenever you have for example you have 64 GB drive and you use only 10 GB, then you will be billed for only that used size, that is that 10 GB. You will not be billed for that complete 64 GB drive. So this is one best advantage of using this snapshot. You can see the used size of your snapshot by looking at the storage usage report. Sorry, Azure usage report. On the in the portal, you can see the Azure usage report to see the used size of your snapshot. Okay, so these are about managed disk snapshot. Next, we will see managed custom image. So managed custom image allow you to create an image or a copy of your disk from your VM. So similarly, so it is a read only copy, where similarly it is also a copy of your disk. So this image contains what this image contains is all managed disk associated with a VM. So whenever you're going to take a managed custom image, in that case the VM will have both OS and data disk. So this is so we might see one concept called capturing image of an VM. So this is the thing. So whenever we do manage custom image, whenever we create a managed custom image, it will can take a copy of all the managed disk associated with the VM, including the OS disk and data disk. Okay, so this is the difference between snapshot, where snapshot will take the read-only copy of single managed disk, while managed custom image will take the image copy of all the managed disk associated with the VM. So these are the difference between snapshot and custom image. We'll see where we use this custom image. So a snapshot doesn't have awareness of any disk except the one it contains. Yes. So whenever you take a copy of single managed disk, it will never have the awareness of any other disk except the one which except the data disk that we took the copy. It will not have any awareness about other data disk. So this makes it problematic to use scenarios that require the coordination of multiple disks, such as typing. So whenever you require the coordination of multiple disks, that case snapshot will never help you. In that case, you can use custom manage. So this is what they are telling. Snapshot would need to be able to coordinate with each other, and this is not currently support. This is where you would want to use a managed custom image. So I hope you understood what is disk management and managed custom image, and where to use this managed custom image. So next we will move to next slide, that is Azure disk types. We have four tiers of disk that is provided by Azure. One is ultra disk, other premium disk, premium SSD, and standard SSD and standard HDD. So we will see what are the features of each disk line by line. Okay, ultra disk. Ultra disk, it delivers the high throughput, high IOPS and consistent low latency disk storage for Azure VMs. So whenever you want high throughput and consistent low latency, in that case you can use Ultra Disk. And it also offers you dynamically change the performance of the disk, so without the need to restart your VM. So performance tier, we have two performance, one is premium and an SS standard. So if you want to use the performance as per your requirement, so in that case you can dynamically change the performance of the disk without restarting your VM. So that is the one that is beneficial of using Ultra Disk. It is suited for data intensive workloads such as SAP HANA, top tier databases, and transaction heavy workloads. So and you can use this Ultra Disk only for data disk, and you can use premium SSD for OS disk. So whenever you use premium SSD for OS disk, in that case you can use this Ultra Disk for data disk, and it is supported with very specific VM series. As we saw earlier, the size of the VM and the series of the VM determines the type of disk that we use and the type of storage that we use in this data disk. So here only some specific VM series is supported by this Ultra Disk, not all the VMs. Okay, these are the things about Ultra Disk. Next we have premium SSD. So premium SSD, it provides high performance and low latency disk support for Azure VMs with input and output intensive workloads. So there we use transaction heavy workloads. Here when we don't have that much transaction heavy workloads, we can go with premium SSD, and it is suitable for mission critical production applications. So whenever some applications will have some high risk, in that case you can use premium SSD, and it will handle the application very smoothly, and it is suitable for those conditions, and only be used with VM series that are premium storage compatible. So whenever you have a premium storage compatible series of VM series, in that case you can use premium SSD, else you will not be able to use this premium SSD. And it provides guaranteed IOPS and throughput of the disk. So we have some other type, that is standard SSD. Standard SSD will not provide IOPS guaranteed, but here it provides guaranteed IOPS. So that is the difference, one major difference between premium SSD and standard SSD. And it is designed to provide low single digit millisecond latency and target IOPS and throughput. So it provides 99.9% of the availability. So whenever you need to have very low latency, in that case you can use premium SSD. Next comes the standard SSD. So standard SSD, whenever you want cost effective, so it is a cost effective storage option optimized for workloads that need consistent performance at lower IOPS level. So when you in premium SSD you need high IOPS level, but whenever you need lower IOPS level but with consistent performance, you can use standard SSD, and it will be a cost effective solution storage option. And compared to standard HDD, it delivers better availability, consistency, reliability, and latency. So in the case of whenever you want whenever you want less performance than this premium SSD, but you want more performance than standard HDD, you can use standard SSD. It is suitable for web servers. So whenever you are going to host a server, internet service, so that case you can use standard SSD. And low IOPS application servers, lightly used enterprise applications and testing workloads. Okay, so in those cases you can use standard SSD. Designed to provide single digit millisecond latency and similar to premium SSD, it also provides single digit millisecond latency. And there we had a 99.9 percentage of the time, but here we have only 99% of the time. But however, it is not going to vary that much. It will provide single digit millisecond latency. um, and then IOPS and throughputs may vary sometimes depending on the traffic patterns. So whenever you have high traffic, that times it will show some low level IOPS and throughput. Whenever you have little traffic, that time it will show high, normal IOPS level and throughput. Okay, it is all available on all Azure VMs, whereas premium SSD is available to only the VM series that are premium storage compatible, but here standard SSD is available on all Azure VMs. Next comes the standard SSD. So it is the least cost effective solution. Whenever you need a reliable support, reliable and low cost disk support for VMs running latency insensitive workloads. So note the point, you have, whenever you are going to work with insensitive workloads, you can use standard SSD. But whenever you have more workloads, you must prefer SSD, either standard or premium as per your requirement. But that in that case, as a standard SDD is not recommended. Okay, so it is available on all Azure VMs, and latency and IOPS throughputs may vary widely compared to this SSD based disk. So it have very less IOPS and throughputs. So next, designed to deliver write latency under 10 milliseconds. See, in standard SSD and premium SSD we have single digit millisecond latency, but here 10 millisecond latency for write latencies, and read latencies under 20 milliseconds. It is not going to differ that much, but the speed differs little. And this standard HDDI is available on all Azure region and can be used with all Azure VMs. So you can use it is also available in all Azure VMs. So these are the four types. We'll see some comparing chart of comparison with comparison with between ultra disk premium SSD, standard SSD and standard HDD. So see the scenarios. It is for highly intensive top tier database heavy workloads. So it is also SSD heavy use production and guarantee of IOPS. Here this standard SSD you can use for light use, development and testing workloads. Next, standard HSD, it is for backup non-critical infrequent access. In that case you can use standard HDD. Now the maximum disk size. So here you have up to 65,000 GB. Their premium SSD provides 32,000 GBs, and standard SSD also provides 32,000 GB, and here HDD also provides approximately to 32.7 kgb. In the maximum disk size, only ultra disk is varying. And next, maximum throughput. Maximum throughput we have 2000 MB per second for ultra disk. So it is really high speed quality. Here you can get high speed. And premium, see the difference between ultra disk and premium disk itself. We have 1000 MB per second nearly. and for standard it is 750 MB per second, and HDD we have 500 MB per second. And when we see maximum IOPS input and output per second, we have um, 1,60,000 for ultra disk, 20,000. See the difference between ultra disk and premium SSD. We have 20,000 for premium SSD and 6,000 for standard SSD and 2,000 for standard HDD. So not for the last topic of the session, Azure Disk bursting. So what is Azure Disk bursting? So disk bursting is the ability to boost disk storage IOPS and MB per second performance for a period of time on both VMs and disk. So you might have some already you will have some performance of your VM and disk based on the VM series and disk type. But whenever you need to boost the disk storage or MB percent performance, IOPS throughput, in that case you can use that case disk bursting will help you. So disk bursting will allows you to handle unexpected disk traffic. So whenever you have unexpected disk traffic, in that case disk bursting allows you to handle those things. So if in case of disk, you no need to upgrade the performance of the disk each and every time. Instead it will use the complete complete performance of the disk to the maximum. So whenever the disk bursting is enabled, so disk bursting on VM and disk are completely independent from one another. So you can either do bursting on disk or bursting on VM, or you can do bursting on both of them at a time, because they are independent from one another. So next, so we have burstable VMs and we have burstable disk. So this disk bursting and VM bursting is not allowed for all the VMs. Instead we have only 3 series, whereas LSV2 series, that too for all region, but DS3 series only in West Central US region. You can enable bursting only in that series and that region, and V3 series in West Central US. So only 3 VM series, not all, and that too only LSV2 series for all region. So next comes to the, so whenever you have this series VM, the bursting is enabled by default for that virtual machine. Okay, so now burstable disk. So which disk will have a bursting option is premium SSD with the disk size P20 or smaller than that. So that those disks will have the bursting option, and it is supported for all region. Bursting is enabled by default for disk that support it. So whenever you have this type of disk, bursting is enabled by default. So this is disk bursting, and this is the last topic of our session. Hope you understood what are the types disk, what is Azure Disk, and encryption, disk roles, disk snapshot and manage custom image, disk types and comparison between them, and last we saw bursting. So thank you for spending your time with me. Thank you so much.